In the heart of ancient Persia, near what is now the Iranian city of Yasuj, a pivotal moment in history unfolded. It was January 20th, 330 BC, and the Persian Gate, a crucial mountain pass in the Zagros Mountains, stood as the last barrier between a young Macedonian king and his ultimate prize, Persepolis, the opulent capital of the Persian Empire. This king was none other than Alexander III of Macedon, known to history as Alexander the Great. At just 25 years old, he had already achieved what many would consider impossible. His campaign, begun 4 years earlier, had seen him conquer vast swaths of territory from the Himalayas to Egypt. Now he stood on the precipice of his greatest triumph, poised to become the unquestioned ruler of all Asia. The results of Alexander's campaign thus far were nothing short of astonishing. The reigning Persian king, Darius III, had narrowly escaped from 2 major battles. Alexander had completely dominated Egypt and virtually all of what is now Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. Even Babylon, the largest city in the world at that time, had surrendered to him without a fight. And now Persepolis, the heart of the Persian Empire, was within his grasp. But who was this extraordinary young man, and how did he come to stand at the gates of the world's most powerful empire? Born in 356 BC in the Macedonian capital of Pella, about 50 kilometers from Thessaloniki, Alexander was destined for greatness from the start. His father, Philip II of Macedon, had transformed his kingdom into a formidable power, uniting nearly all of Greece under his rule. Philip had elevated Macedonia to an unprecedented level, defeating the most powerful Greek city-states led by Athens, and uniting them all, except Sparta, in the Corinthian League, which he himself headed. Alexander's mother, Olympias, was a fiercely ambitious woman from the royal family of Epirus, a territory roughly in the area of present-day Albania. Impetuous and much disliked at Philip's court, Olympias set as her main goal in life to win the succession for their son Alexander. She was willing to do practically anything to achieve the same, even being suspected of involvement in Philip's murder. Years later, after Alexander's death, she would seek revenge on those she believed were involved in his demise, only to be stoned to death by the families of her many victims just before she turned 60. From a young age, Alexander received the finest education available. His tutor was none other than the great philosopher Aristotle, who instilled in him a deep knowledge of all major sciences, excellent independent reasoning, and a wealth of social skills. This theoretical foundation would prove invaluable in the years to come. At 18, Alexander got his first taste of real battle. His father entrusted him with a great task at Chaeronea, in a fight against the coalition of Greek Athens and Thebes. Leading the Macedonian cavalry, Alexander decimated the elite Theban Sacred Band, a unit of 150 pairs of male lovers renowned for their ferocity in battle. This victory foreshadowed the military genius that would become his hallmark. When Philip II was assassinated 2 years later by his bodyguard and apparent lover Pausanias, the 20-year-old Alexander faced his first true test as a leader. Greek city-states and neighboring tribes, sensing weakness, rebelled against Macedonian rule. Alexander's response was swift and brutal. He crushed the rebellions, razed Thebes to the ground, and secured the loyalty of the Greek states. With his home front secure, he turned his gaze eastward, to Persia.
In May 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont, today's Dardanelles, with 40,000 men, embarking on a campaign that would span 12 years and cover over 30,000 kilometers. His string of victories was unprecedented. He defeated the Persian king Darius III 3 times, captured key ports along the Mediterranean, and founded the city of Alexandria in Egypt, a port where today 4 million people live and through which 80% of Egypt's exports and imports pass. Alexander's treatment of conquered territories varied. Some cities, such as Tyre and Gaza, he sacked mercilessly, slaughtering inhabitants or selling them into slavery. Elsewhere, he acted generously, establishing good relations with local rulers. This pragmatic approach was necessary for administering and maintaining such a vast empire. By 330 BC, Alexander stood before the Persian Gate, the last obstacle between him and Persepolis. The local satrap, Ariobarzanes, had fortified the pass with a high wall, inflicting heavy losses on Alexander's troops. For a month, the pass held, the longest delay in Alexander's entire campaign. It was only when local tribesmen revealed a secret trail that Alexander was able to outflank the defenders and secure victory. Ariobarzanes and his comrades were executed, and the road to Persepolis lay open. With Persepolis captured, Alexander became the richest man in the world. He shipped out 5 tons of gold and allowed his troops to plunder the city. In a symbolic act of revenge for the Persian sack of Athens 150 years earlier, he burned the royal palace to the ground during one of his notorious drinking bouts. But even with Persia conquered, Alexander's ambitions knew no bounds. He pressed on into Central Asia, pursuing the fleeing Darius. When Darius was betrayed and killed by Bessus, the ruler of Bactria, Alexander had the treacherous satrap mutilated and crucified. He then continued into India, an unexplored and wild land that presented new challenges. In India, Alexander faced fierce opposition, unlike anything he had encountered before. His enemies deployed fighting elephants, and the morale of his men steadily declined. Eventually, he had to abandon his goal of reaching the great outer sea, as it was simply too much for his troops. The return journey to Persia was fraught with difficulties. Part of Alexander's army sailed by sea, while the rest, including Alexander himself, traveled overland. During this time, Alexander's adoption of Persian customs and his demand for prostration, proskinesis, began to strain relations with his men. The freedom-loving Greeks saw this as gross humiliation, and resentment grew. Alexander even had his own historian, Callisthenes, a relative of Aristotle, executed for opposing these Oriental practices. In 323 BC, Alexander returned to Babylon, already planning new conquests to Arabia, Sicily, Italy, and even Gibraltar. But fate had other plans. In May, he was struck down by illness, perhaps Nile fever, perhaps the effects of his heavy drinking, or possibly poison. His condition deteriorated rapidly. A month before his 33rd birthday, in June 323 BC, Alexander the Great lay on his deathbed in Babylon, surrounded by his top officers. When asked who should rule the empire after him, he uttered his famous last words, "To the strongest." With these words, he set the stage for the fracturing of his vast empire. Alexander's life was a whirlwind of conquest and ambition. In just over a decade, he had created an empire larger than any European had ever imagined. His legacy would shape the course of history for centuries to come, leaving an indelible mark on the ancient world and beyond. The boy who was tutored by Aristotle had grown into a man who changed the face of the known world, blending cultures and opening up new horizons that would influence civilization for millennia to come.